evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Welcome to this fireside chat. But I think it's more than that. It's really an engagement with all of you, and we're very, very privileged and honored to have Mitch joining us.
Thank
Great,
you.
good to see you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
And all the way from the United States, I'm sure he has a pile of stories that he's going to share with us. He's promised to be open and candid and authentic, and that's what we want to be here. Mitch has, many, a lot of accolades about his life, and but three words come to mind: Netflix, Redbox, and MoviePass. Those are the anchors of his life. Mitch, tell us about the early stages of your life. Who were your inspirations? Do you remember a moment as you were growing up as a young person, your dad or your mom or somebody that really made an impact in your life?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for coming here. I really appreciate it. I always like talking, so this is a great way for me to talk without with kind of an unlimited amount of time. I grew up in Northern California. My father was an aeronautic engineer, and so he was always traveling all over the U.S. He eventually, when I was 8 or 9, he moved to Germany, and he was the European editor for Aviation Week magazine. And so I remember, going to visit, and then just, being enamored by other parts of the world. It's an absolute truism that Americans think they know, but really don't know what's going on outside, the U.S. And I just found it so interesting. All I wanted to do was travel and see other countries and meet other people, and so my big influence was travel, was really just meeting, not just like as a tourist, but going and living places. So I quit high school halfway through my senior year of school. I was one of those kids that could not take direction. If you told me what to do, I was never going to do it. And so I figured out a way to like, the excuse was, I'm going to go see my dad in Munich. And the minute I got there, I bought a motorcycle and just started traveling all over. So that was, the exposure to different cultures was really kind of what taught me a lot.
That sense of adventure, where did it take you? I mean, what are the kinds of interesting, memorable experiences that you had? I mean, you must have got yourself in a lot of trouble.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the things that really connected me with the Middle East is, because I had no job and no education, it was kind of, how do I make money? And I had gotten in a fight with my father, so he kind of said, you're on your own, which probably was a good thing. And I had heard that you could sell German diesel Mercedes in Damascus and sell them for 3 or 4 times what you paid for them in Germany. So I would go into Heidelberg. I got to know a used car dealer, and I would buy an old, like, 280 or 220 diesel Mercedes, and I would drive it all the way across Europe, across Eastern Europe, across Turkey. And in those days, Turkey was all dirt roads. Yeah. And drive it down to Damascus and sell it and make enough money I would then go to Cairo, and I would buy stuff in the Kano Kahili market and then bring it back to the US and sell, make enough profit to go do it again. The trouble I would get into is I went through Romania one time and saw these beautiful clothes that were handmade, silk blouses that the women made as dowry pieces. And so I started swinging up through Romania, and I would just go house to house in the mountains, in the Transylvanian mountains, and buy all these kind of embroidered clothes, and I'd sell them in Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive. And the trouble was, I realized this is, this is in the 70s, so it's still behind the Iron Curtain. Ceausescu was the premier,
Yes.
and the money had no value. So I would buy Romanian money in Switzerland or in Vienna and put it in my shoes and bring it into the country where it was worth 10 times more than what I had paid for it.
Right.
And one time I got caught as I'm in a village. A policeman showed up and wondered where my papers were for official exchange rates, and I ended up giving him some money and got out of it. But
that was the official exchange rate, the amount of money that you had to...
But I think those experiences, teach you flexibility and teach you, culture.
You basically, my follow-on question was, what were your learnings? What were the things that you don't learn at school, but you learn in life?
I think and this I think is an important lesson, no matter what you're doing, is learn to listen to other people.
Now that gives us about a gap of about 25 years before you actually got into a Netflix environment. Right. So how did you meander your way through life during that time?
Yeah, so I ended up I ended up moving to Monte Carlo, and I lived there for a couple years. Once the Vietnam War was over, I went back to the U.S. and I set up a little store. It was an art gallery that I would sell things. I would go to Europe, go to Eastern Europe, go to Egypt, go to Syria and Lebanon, and I would buy things that I thought Americans would like, and I'd sell them in the store.
Right.
So that went on in San Francisco, did that for many years,
right.
Until I got wind in the early 80s of this idea of renting movies and opening video stores. So I opened a single store in northern California, just north of San Francisco.
The big VHS kind of stores.
Those big clunky cassettes,
Yes.
and this is pre-computer, so you would have all the movies on the wall. You would have these little tag systems. Different video stores use different methods.
Yes.
And the first innovation I can recall was because for each customer, we created a 3x5 card with all their information. We would use triplicate receipts. So when you rented, we'd put the title and the code and the price. And one would go inside the movie that you took home. One put in a stack for the daily revenue, and then one clipped to that 3x5 card. But how do we know when the movie is due back? So our innovation was colored paper clips. So red was Monday, and it's just what I found is this whole idea of solving things that don't work right, or it just was a fascinating space and always interesting to me. I would see all kinds of things that didn't work right, that I thought, why do you have to fill out all this paperwork? Or, why, if in the movie business, why does a customer, have to go through 5,000 different titles to find something good? So I think it taught me that everything can be improved. Doesn't matter what it is. And that I found an interesting journey, that led to all these other companies.
Fast forward to Netflix. How did you manage to get in there? What were your thoughts? Because I guess it was close to your business. I mean, Blockbuster was at that time, selling videos and DVDs and stuff like that. So how did you find your way there?
Yeah, at the time, Blockbuster was a $5 billion a year business. So I owned this store, and I built it up to a chain of 10 stores. And I was always looking for new businesses to add to it. We sold ice cream and candy, and we had a business that worked for the studios to build in-store displays. And in 1997, I met these customers who were the founders of Autodesk, which is a CAD company, very successful. And we decided that this is like the beginning of the dot-com boom, in the late 90s. And here we are in San Francisco Bay Area. So we had this idea, we're going to build a business that puts video stores on the internet and in a menu-driven program, because no one knew how to program, so we would do this. And I was exhibiting at a trade show, and a guy walked up to the booth and started asking me all these questions. He had a scruffy beard, sandals, and a backpack. And he's asking me all these questions about DVD, because DVD had just launched. And then he started walking away. Like, he was asking me, what happens if you bend them? Will they break? And I wasn't sure why he was asking. He was being very stealthy. And he goes, okay, thanks. And he started walking away. And he remembers this story is slightly different, but my version is right. I grabbed his backpack and, right at the neck where you have a little leverage, and I pulled him back. He almost fell back. And I said, how come you didn't give me your name or phone number? We should talk. And kind of reluctantly, he gave me his phone number, Mark Randolph, who is really the true founder of Netflix. And so we started meeting, eventually I called him. We started meeting every week at a place called Buck's Cafe, which is where Jerry Yang came up with Yahoo. If you go to the San Francisco area, behind Stanford campus in Woodside is this place called Buck's Cafe. And you'll go in there and you'll see napkins of some of the most famous businesses, the business plan written on a napkin, framed. It's a real cool place if you like entrepreneur stuff. So we would meet every week, and he was looking for somebody who knew the video rental business, and he and Reed owned this company called Pure Atria, and they had just sold the company, so they were looking for something to do. And when he asked me, so do you think if we mailed DVDs to people's homes that's a business? And like, I'm always positive. I've kind of come to the conclusion that any idea could work if you just do it right. So I just automatically said yes. I had no idea. But I think it just was these coincidences that I followed. I wasn't going to just let the world decide, what was going to happen. I wanted to kind of be active about the future.
So in the early days of Netflix, as it was sort of working its way through in terms of trying to find its business model, trying to find, what were the kind of conversations that you were having, and where was the abrasion in terms of old and new, and that kind of thing, and the innovation that went through it with it?
Yeah, well, we went through 3 or 4 big pivots. When we started the business, we were just like a video store. You paid $4.99 for a 1-week rental. We mailed it to your home. You mailed it back. There was late fees. We sold movies. And, people thought it was cool. In those days, anything on the internet was interesting. But we were losing money like crazy. And but we realized we're not gonna get anywhere. So we would constantly look at what was the kind of magical thing we could do, what magical innovation would kind of create a passion around the product. And we did that by listening to customers, being customers ourselves. And, I always say this, to anybody in business, is you've got to buy or use your product just like a customer. I mean, almost all our innovation came from using it. All the streaming ideas of skipping the intro music so you don't go crazy listening to Stranger Things theme music. That's all from employees. So I think the first big innovation was we were sitting in our warehouse in San Jose. We had about 1 million DVDs in shoeboxes, and Reed looked at the 6 of us. We were the leaders of the company, and he said, "What are all these DVDs doing here? They should be in people's homes." And that's when we came up with this idea of a subscription. Well, if we just will send 4 DVDs at anybody's choice, and they can keep them at home, and then they can send them back, whenever they want, and, there won't be any late fees. But that was, the real kind of first innovation. There was a lot more after that, but.
So you got the big gorilla sitting there, which is Blockbuster. You are the young insurgents, the activists who are going out there doing.
Yeah.
What were they doing wrong, and what were you doing right at that point in time? And then, it's an interesting tension. And my follow-on question is how do you keep losing money and continue your business? I always struggle with that.
That was the theme of a .com business. You had to lose a lot of money before you could make money. Netflix just recently started making money.
I know.
Amazon the same.
Yeah.
Blockbuster had this mentality that they knew the business much more than we did. I was the only guy who knew the video business for the first 2 or 3 years. And we were running out of money. The .com bubble had burst. We were burning about $500,000 a month and had maybe 6 months of money left. So we thought, who could be a strategic investor? And there was Blockbuster and Hollywood Video.
Right.
So we went to Hollywood Video first because we thought their culture was cooler than Blockbuster. And they informed us they were working on a project that was a Netflix competitor. So we went to Blockbuster and we invited the executives up to San Francisco to meet with us, and we'd show them the operation. And we were like so proud. We were like going to show them how technological savvy we were. And so they all came up. We had just bought a U.S. postal sorting machine. I don't know if you've seen these. They're like 10 meters long.
Yes.
And you put envelopes on one end and, they shoot them out to all the zip codes and stuff into little crates. And we could not get it to work. It kept like shooting envelopes everywhere. They were flying through the air. And we only had an hour before these guys were showing up. And so this is kind of pretty innovative. One of the warehouse guys said, I can cut a hole in that wall and we'll put the end of the machine on the other side of the wall so they won't see all the envelopes flying everywhere. And so we cranked up the machine. We're putting in the envelopes. We're thinking we're showing off.
Yeah.
And one of the CFO said, "What's that noise I hear?" And of course, we immediately turned it off. But their psychology was they were going to find out everything about what we were doing to see if they would do it themselves. And, but we saw a potential investor. So we offered them half of the company for $50 million. And that was our starting price. We were absolutely willing to go down, but their response was, why would we buy half of your company? We know more about the business than you do. If it's a great idea, we'll just do it ourselves. And they left. And several years later, they did try to copy us.
Right.
But by that, their problem was they couldn't compete against themselves.
Right.
They were renting movies for $4.50 for a 2-day rental. And if they tried to do a subscription, their concern was, what are customers going to do? Are we going to cannibalize a very profitable business?
Okay. You built a completely unique culture there.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share with us Patty McCord, who was your head of HR, and the unique things that you did there, which made the news?
It was, and really, even though there was 7 of us that were responsible for it, Patty was the designer, and our CEO Reed, who is still co-CEO, was the supporter of this idea, and it had some really interesting aspects. There was a freedom. There was this kind of idea of context, not control. So the idea was, first hire the absolute top people, pay them extraordinarily well, and then let them figure out how to accomplish their goals. Give them very clear goals, measure their performance, and on top of that, we were pretty draconian in that if you failed, you were gone. We kind of followed the Jack Welch model of letting the bottom 10% go every year.
Yeah.
And we gave them great severance, but it was that pressure, but also the joy of being the person who could say, I did that,
Yeah.
I accomplished that.
So, from my memory, there were things like there was no timing. There was you could take your own holiday. There
Unlimited vacation.
Unlimited vacation. You were even fixing your own salaries at some stage, and there was a lot of peer level support within that.
Yeah.
Can you ever imagine having a place with no salaries, no timing, no nothing, and being successful? How did that work? And why did it work?
It's really kind of funny. When you tell people, our kind of rule was unlimited vacation. You do whatever you want. You come to work, you don't come to work, we don't care. All you got to do is accomplish your goals. And remember, if you don't accomplish your goals, you're fired. If you do accomplish your goals, you get huge bonuses. And what ended up happening, no one ever took vacation. No one ever, because they were, and part of it was that sense of ownership. When you have, like most of us work in companies where maybe 10% of the people in the company are coming to you with ideas or passionate about the success. In this case, everybody constantly was coming up with new ideas and ways to improve the business. And part of it was they used, it was easier in our business because people used the product. But it really created, and we had other aspects too. We had every month a meeting like this where someone had to get up in front of the group and explain something that they did that didn't work. Right. And so that sense of pride that you were teaching everybody else not to make the same mistake as you'd made was an important part of growing fast.
What was the inflection point, and then we'll walk into the future of entertainment. Mm-hmm. What was the inflection point of Netflix going from really an insurgent new company coming up to becoming mainstream, knocking out blockbusters and moving forward? There must have been a moment.
Well, streaming, we always knew that we would be delivering movies over the internet. We called it Netflix back in '98 when there was no, bandwidth to be able to do that. Yeah. We just didn't know how. We didn't know whether it would be downloading or streaming. In 2008 was the first streaming of content. And it was so bad and people were so confused about how to use it. It was free. So, and it was, like no one would pay for it. In fact, for the first 2 years, nobody paid for any streaming content. And around 2010, thank you, 3 of the studios decided that they were going to try to put us out of business. So what they did, and remember, 90+% of our business was still DVDs, mailing to people's homes. And they decided that they weren't going to make available to us the hit movies until 3 or 4 weeks after Blockbuster and Walmart had them. And that caused the company to focus on the streaming part of it. And it's like, okay, you remember we had this mantra of speed of delivery. We learned early on that customers, the amount of time from the time you want to watch something to the time you can actually do it was a huge factor in loyalty. And so streaming was the ultimate solution. So once we realized we could actually stream content, that was where we started becoming, part of people's lives. But it was 2010 where that really started happening.
Are you still with Netflix now, or are you retired?
No, I left Netflix. I got I've made a number of stupid decisions in my life, but one of them, while in the early days of Netflix, Google's office was just down the street, and they came to me and asked me if I would be their VP of Business Development, and I turned that one down. And then years later, McDonald's came to me and recruited me to run an idea, kind of a think tank that they had, which ultimately became a company called Redbox. And so after we went public at Netflix, I left and joined McDonald's. I still consulted with Netflix, and in fact, still I have a lot of friends.
When you tried to do what you did at Netflix into MoviePass and say, well, unlimited viewing, do what the hell you like.
Yeah.
What was your thinking? What went right? What went wrong?
A lot went wrong. So one of the really interesting things that we accomplished at Netflix was this idea of people discovering things they never would have watched in a la carte world, where you have to make a decision: is this worth it or not worth it? And that kind of depresses consumption. You don't try things that you don't know are going to be worth it. So MoviePass was all about kind of my passion and love for independent films, documentaries, and foreign films, which, if you look at the theater business, everybody was going to Marvel and, those big blockbuster hits, but they weren't seeing I, Tanya and,
Right.
the really good foreign films. So the launch of MoviePass with an unlimited subscription, so for $10 you could see all the movies you want, actually got people to not only go back to the theater, but the movies they went back to see were small, independent films. The mistake was we grew too fast. We grew faster than we could control fraud. So we grew in 8 months to 3.2 million paid subscribers, and the system was not capable of keeping people from abusing the system. People were trading their membership or loaning the card to friends. So the average person was costing us $27 a month for an income of $10. And, I should have controlled the growth.
Controlling growth for a person like you was probably a completely an antithesis of life. I mean, that doesn't quite work.
Right.
You seem to be quite determined to maintain your model. And for entrepreneurs and business people, what's the time in the moment where you say, enough of this shit, and I've got to change? Is it about humility? Is it about just common sense? Because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm very persistent, I keep going, and I take it as a personal insult if I have to give up something.
Yeah.
What was your dynamic with that?
Yeah, I think the problem for a lot of us in startups or in entrepreneurs is that you don't know what is the right time to give up on your idea, because there's always something you realize you could have done or should have done, or some minor tweak, and everything will work. And there's many examples of this. I kind of look at it, almost every kind of product or service, like 3 legs of a stool. For that stool to stand, it's typically not just one. It's not just price, or it's not just selection, or it's not just merchandising or location. It's the 3 of those things coming together with the right, fine tuning of each one, and then the business just takes off. So I've never known when that right moment is where you're not going to figure that out.
Yeah.
And now you need to change. I've almost always relied on other people, kind of telling me, what, this is not going to work. You got to give up.
So how good or comfortable are you with failure?
I hate it. I'm embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
So like I always thought, this is maybe too personal, but I'm sure we all feel this way. I always thought that, in deep inside, that maybe Netflix was just a fluke. I was just really lucky. So I always thought, I've got, what drove me for Redbox, and I grew Redbox to $1.5 billion a year in revenue, and we were generating $300 million in free cash flow a year. And what was driving me was proving that Netflix for me wasn't just an accident or a fluke.
Yeah.
So you have to look for what motivates you, what
Sure.
can keep you up.
Is it ego that drives things with people, and especially entrepreneurs, or is it something more than that?
I think it is deeper. There's definitely ego part of it. I found that people who are perseverant and don't give up on these things have a common characteristic, and it's a hard one to interview for, but if you can identify it, it helps. And what I found, and I also have this problem, is you feel that one or both parents didn't believe you were worthy, or your parent, one or another parent, just you were trying to earn their respect, whether they're still alive, or they passed away. That inside, trying to prove that your father or mother, should think you're amazing, drives a lot of people, and I think deep inside, I think that was always my issue.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that personal information. So San Francisco failure is a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
Here it's a hospital pass. I mean, you're dead. Yeah. So we're not used to failure, and culturally we don't accept failure. We lose face. And so on. So
yeah, well, it's I think that in many circumstances, we all we're embarrassed by it. It's like whether it's family or job, and it actually ends up being the worst thing for a company, because your employees will hide their mistakes or try to limit who knows about them.
Sure.
And that means, as a leader or a manager, you might not hear about most of the
Sure.
problems.
Exactly.
And I found two solutions, and this was really key to the Netflix success, and that is that no one hid their mistakes, and so you never had to worry about not knowing what was going on, and people would use that as an opportunity to teach other people, here's what I thought, here's what I did, here's what didn't work. And that allowed managers to really have a better, I don't know if you've ever had like a brand new employee, they're young, they don't know how to be politically correct, and they'll blurt out something that you go, why didn't, the person who reports to me didn't tell me, why didn't they tell me that? And that's like cancer to a company.
Right.
So it's important.
Last part of this chat really is looking into the future. Let's project ourselves into the year, say 2025. We saw the music industry change from DVDs and whatever to going into SoundCloud and into iTunes and so on. Where do you see the entertainment business going? And movies is just one of them, but the whole
ecosystem.
gamut, the whole ecosystem, from
Yeah.
gaming to movies to content to whatever. Where's it going?
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is my view is on kind of a micro and a macro perspective. So on a macro perspective, the things that entertain us are getting shorter and shorter. Very rarely do we have 2 hours to sit and watch a movie in one spell. And so I think the kind of content we're going to be watching is going to be 2 minutes, 5 minutes, long. But at the same time, we all love good stories with characters we can fall in love with or be passionate about. So it'll be, like all these little segments that you could string together into a long story where you can, kind of follow the progression of the people. And so I think we're going to see a lot of, and even Snapchat is now doing 5-minute murder mystery episodes.
Yeah. May I challenge you on that? There was this company which went bust about 12, 18
Quibi,
months ago.
yeah.
Sorry, what was it called?
Quibi.
Quibi.
Yeah.
They were trying to do that. They put in hundreds of millions of dollars. They got some great people.
Yeah.
And
Katzenberg and Meg Whitman.
Meg Whitman, yeah. And it completely tanked.
Yeah.
So what you're just saying completely failed.
Yeah. Like I said, I think all ideas can be successful and all ideas can fail, not always because of the idea, but the execution. And one of the things that Katzenberg and Whitman did with Quibi is they didn't learn what customers wanted before they invested tens of millions of dollars into the business or content. So, they were basically out there licensing short form content.
Yeah.
And with their, they have, both of them have been extremely successful, and especially Katzenberg in content. So they use their own understanding of what people would want to see and produced it. And that wasn't what people wanted. We're not quite ready for what they produced. What people are interested now that's short form is user created content like TikTok and YouTube and things. And that's kind of the second big macro trend. If you look at consumption today, there is over 1 billion TikTok clips watched a week. And if you look at movies and so on, there's about 50,000 TV episodes that are created per year versus billions and billions of YouTube clips and TikTok clips. So I think to finish the Quibi one, Quibi just started out too early addressing something that I think is 5 years from now.
Okay.
And I think it's a combination of produced content as well as user created content.
But they also spent a crazy amount of money on getting the big names in there and potentially too early.
Yeah.
Now, is TikTok a phenomena that is going to be across all ages, or is it a demographically youthful project?
I think definitely right now it's youthful. Interestingly, TikTok has hired a number of Netflix executives. And what I hear is TikTok wants to be the competitor to Netflix. Right now they have an initiative to teach their influencers to tell stories, to actually create more of a series that's going to keep you coming back in different, and they already do it in different ways, but they want them to be storytellers as well. So I think those are some of the big changes. But then there's there's a whole segment of the world population that can't afford $4 or $5 or $6 or $7 a month. And so you're going to see Netflix with a free service, advertising supported. You're going to see many other, those are actually the fastest growing services right now.